Greetings that are friendly. Professor Brassthorn here. Through the diligent study of cross-ether-casting frequencies, I am slowly learning how to coordinate the ever-listening cosmic ear. All things perceived as sound are cast off into the multiverse. And with the proper attunement and vast disposal of highly sensitive equipment, one can even document the sounds of their life for everlasting posterity. If only I had dedicated my research to this endeavor instead of necrotology. I'd have an endless supply of life-giving algorithms as opposed to the other side of that existential token. After all this research, I find myself tripping down a nostalgic vein, after acquiring my airship and all the curious madness that followed that blessed curse. I'm standing at the lower ballast of the airship Dreamstrider, staring at the makeshift door. Next to it, a cannon that hasn't seen use in some time, covered in books and coffee cups. I have gathered the ghosts of my past, and now they all stand whispering into the caverns of my mind. I could tell you of the horrid atrocities which bore me the name Necrofessor, regale you of the tale of the destruction of my home city of Victrolia under the weight of Heaven's Gear's calibration war. I could even tell you of the time I halted the putrescent advance of the Plague of Shadows. But tonight, you have caught me in a good mode. And this door of hybridized fused metal and healed-over scar tissue carapace reminds me of that fateful night. For you, those who are listening in the dark airwaves, I give you Escape the Air Kraken, or How I Made a New Door for the Airship Using a Cannon. I was younger then, but time is always twisted in dreams. I was still a plague walker roaming the outer rifts of the cities looking for a cure to this hideous plague. And once my airship was aloft in the steamlands, I felt that the pertinence of secrecy was even more affronted to my endeavors. Not many were aware of the trans-dimensional portal travel as the clandestine sex of airship crews back then, because to harness the ever-expanding technologies of the far-reaching corners of dimensional frontiers, it quickly became closely guarded secrets to those who've peered beyond such veils. Nowadays, it seems common knowledge. Dimensional travel? Sure, we have a trans-difference engine in the back. Such talk no more than a decade ago was the stuff of legends. Pocket dimensions, planetary travel outside galactic gravities, transmutable worm tunneling, and elemental dark energy crafting in subspace were all things typically found in the arcane lexicon of those fringe sciences lost in time. Gifts from time walkers and lower gods alone. My, how time flies. During these nights, I kept to myself, for there were events that led me to leaving the church as their plague walker for hire, once Heaven's Gear began monopolizing universities for their intellectual arms race. No one was safe, and all the laboratories of worth became under scrutiny by this proverbial war between gods and machinery. However, I was still one that was hunting for a cure, thinking that if I could just rid this land of the Plague of Shadows, that the fear-based religious diatribes that were spouted at the community would lose that very precious psychological foothold on our community. They blamed the scientists for the plague. Those monsters had no idea that... I digress. There was a peculiar mushroom that had quite unique healing properties that only grew in small pockets of the jungle. However, this jungle had made itself known that outsiders were not welcome. Whether it be from voracious flora or the nightmarish poisoned fauna, the jungle had another unique property. It glowed, brimming with a vibrant hue of electrical energy. Not even the most stalwart airships traversed closely enough to the jungle, for their electrical equipment and navigational sensor arrays would be on the fritz. Magnetic disturbances would cripple the communication systems, and in return would also wreak havoc on the engines and external metallic extremities. The price for the secrets held within the jungle were indeed high, and the expeditions yielded rarities only afforded to the highest bidder. But recently something unique had taken place. There were reports from nearby townships that the jungle's vibrant hue was dulling, as if something was causing a flux in the electrical energies of the jungle. It was a prime moment to strike. I had to acquire those mushrooms. After a slew of forged paperwork to alleviate the enigmatic eyes which might oversee my airship hovering in the docks of the harbor, I made my way to one of the few individuals who could give me tips about the excursion before I disembarked. Although the airship Dreamstrider does retain many metallic internalizations, unknown to many is my ship is a living, organic creature, merely under the guise of a dirigible of curious anatomy. I was confident that my spacesuit would keep me grounded from the electrical anomalies. But once I entered within the jungle's closer airspace, all my communication systems, even that of the subspace communications, would be rendered useless. I would not be able to call for help after that, and the distress flares would not be heeded by anyone who valued their own airship. The ionized radiation furiously alleviating electrons from their atoms could still hurtle through, but, well, when you're in the business of science of a maddening variety like you've had your fair share of mutated DNA by this point. I had to gather intel. Anyone who might be able to offer me information on the jungle to give me a fighting chance. Enter A1 Professor Humphrey Lardnet, a fellow colleague of mine who worked closely to abolish the boundaries of humanistic advance. Recently released from his imprisonment for illegal genetic tampering, a man who breached many a forbidden science. And like all great men, women, and sentients who were lauded for their fine work, was forced to abscond from civilized university and pursue endeavors from the confines of a hidden laboratory all throughout the multiverse. Though a learned man, his place of leisure was something reserved for the more carefree denizens. And with most of my clothing is found with bloodstains these nights, I was happy to know that formal wear need not apply. And so, I walked the cobblestone side streets in my plague garb, towards the Gelatinous Kitty Bathhouse and Spa.
Hark, fellow wanderers, the end draws near. Forgo the shackles of flesh, and embrace the alloys of God. I have seen beyond the stars. Listen well. Steam is the essence of a soul. You there, Plague Walker, could you spare some gears for the fallen automaton?
Spare some gears? Why would I give you gears when I know what you're going to buy with it?
Well...
You're going to buy verdigris with it, I know it. I know your kind all too well. That stuff will rust you and rot you from the inside out, you know that? You'll be nothing but a patinaed coat rack by the end of the year. You really believe steam is the essence of the soul? You would do well not to rot your essence away with such limited escape from this reality.
You certainly would know all about rot, Plague Walker.
Be gone, and spare me your insults, you robo-bum. Go peddle your sorrows elsewhere. Ah, here we are. The Gelatinous Kitty. Professor Lardnet!
Professor Brassthorn, is that you? Well, burst my boilers, good lad. Come, take off that dreadful plague garb and join me. I was about to enjoy a nice soak in the sauna.
I will pass. Oh, it seems you have company. How do you do? My name is Brassthorn.
How do you do? My name is Pearl.
Oh, sprocket sauce, where are my manners? This is my blushing bride, Pearl Calamity Bot 3.0. The other two rusted away, you see. But, as you well know, since they recently repealed the law against humans marrying automatons, I had set forth to have my own crafted spouse from the spare cutlery. I had to make some modifications from the other ones. Seems I spent too much time in the bathhouse for their liking. But, till death do we part, isn't that right, my shiny penny?
You repulse me.
I must say that steam-powered bustle is very fetching on you, Pearl.
Thank you.
Ah, yes. Only the top-of-the-line steam garments for my lovely teapot. Though she does tend to overheat a bit, so I got her a fan. Isn't that right, my sweetie magnet?
I despise you.
So, what brings you to the bathhouse, my good professor? By the way, what are you a professor of, anyway?
Necrotology. The study of death as an energy source.
Oh, of course, my good lad. Sorry, the heat is getting to me. And watching my beautiful bolt cutter stand in the steam fills me with... well, you know.
Your death will be slow and painful.
Well, I sought you out to garner some information about the Blue Jungle. Seems that the electrical energy is subsiding at night, and I wish to make an excursion there to gather as many mushrooms from the jungle floor as I can in hopes of deriving some of the curing properties held within. But I need to know how to go about it.
Oh, well, certainly a pleasure to oblige you, my good lad. You see, they say that the jungle gained its electrical properties from the cross-electrical transference experiment gone awry. The scientist is lost to the aether of memory, but the jungle's pervasive nature has indeed given rise to many a myth and conjecture. Some say that beautiful harpies sing their song in ways of alluring wayward airships into the thick atmosphere of the jungle, and ensnaring their captives in a wrought menagerie of orchestrated electrical vinework and the like. They say it's tentacles, but it must be vines. But it's all balderdash, I say. Truth be told, these are just tales spun by old codgers and dodgers who lost their airships to electrical malfunctionality and are just sore about the whole ordeal of losing their airship, that they feel they need to weave such stories. I don't believe a word of it, but then again, I've never been on the field, as it were. Of course, the fact that the electricity subsides at particular parts of the evening is indeed curious. Maybe it's... No, that'd just be silly.
What?
Tell me, my good lad, how much do you know about Air Krakens?
Only a passing knowledge. I know they are considered an endangered species. They can traverse air and sea, and they're big and aggressive.
Aye, my good lad, the microcosmos marinus is known throughout the world, but only the likes of ship captains and unfortunate soul-shard dwellers have ever had the unsought privilege of beholding such monolithic creatures. They are reported to grow to nearly 300 fathoms long, longer than the Leviathan-class warships of old. 8 long and barbed sucker-laden tentacles, and 2 long feeding tentacles known to easily crush the whole of a warship. They travel in squads, but are reported to only exist in the higher pantheon of atmospheric ether climates. Their heavy bodies sail through the air by the intense propulsion of their siphons and mantle vents, an evolutionary advancement used from when they originally emerged from the sea and took to the sky millions of years ago. The rare phenomenon of the black rains are attributed to the Air Kraken releasing their ink into the clouds. Interestingly enough, one fact that is consistently left out of the textbooks is that they are exquisite at harnessing electrical energy. Electrical weaponry has little, if not reverse effects on them, and all those who used to retrofit their whaling airships to hunt Air Kraken was met with a horrible consequence, as the majority of their Tesla cannons were rendered useless. They are somewhat nomadic, but fiercely territorial for whatever part of the atmosphere they find themselves. I pray you find that the jungle has been overtaken by some form of humanistic electrical transformer. For if it turns out that an Air Kraken has indeed overthrown the canopy of the jungle, forget about the mushrooms, Brassthorn. You will die. Simple as that. Trust me, if I am an expert at anything, gene splicing aside, is that I know all too well about the horrors of the cephalopodic creatures of this world. It would be a fool's gambit to try and outsmart the long arm of a monster of that magnitude, much less the 9 others. And the beak! Don't get me started! Curls my mustache just thinking about it.
Yes, I was going to ask about that fine piece of facial adornment you have on you. Since when did you come across a tentacled mustache?
Oh, didn't you know? That's why those blasted government fingers of Enigma tossed me in the Iron House for illegal genetic manipulation. You see, I wanted a way to adjust my monocle without having to resort to reaching up and actually touching my face, while they were busy with my spouse. So I isolated the tentacular genesis genome of the common squid and hybridized it into the growth pattern of my facial follicles, giving way to the very first of a new wave of prehensile mustaches. Wonderful, don't you agree? Behold.
That is truly a marvel of modern gene manipulation, Professor.
Well, unfortunately, now everything smells of the sea. But that certainly doesn't bother my vivacious lugnut over here, eh, Pearl?
Please kill me.
I think I have all I need to know. Thank you, Professor Lerdnet. I'll be on my way now.
Now, my darling gearbox, what say we unbolt my girdle and have a bit of naughty fun? What do you say?
My life is pain.
Threnody Radio, don't eat me up.
After that wonderful experience and the hideous vision of a tentacled mustache ravaging that poor automaton maiden, I returned to the airship harbor to see that a delivery parcel was waiting me at the cargo bay. A long wooden crate bolted together by the signature craft of the one and only Captain Edward Leviticus. My eyes lit up like a jack-o'-lantern on Halloween, looking over and seeing his wild grin stamped on the side of the crate. To receive a box from the prestigious Edward Leviticus was both a thrill and an honor. Even if it was a bomb, I would die knowing that the craftsmanship would be stellar. I boarded my airship immediately and disembarked from the harbor. I immediately ran down to the lower ballast of the loading dock to meet the parcel. I used the crux of my plague lantern to rend open the box, eager to discover what was inside. I was met with a sea of sawdust and parchment, with a note resting above it. As the airship rose, my heart equally sank, as the fervent suspicions of my excursion were revealed to me. To my friend and colleague, Professor Brassthorn. Salutations, my good man. This epistle is in response to your ambitions to attempt an excursion into the vast void of the Steamlands. I must relay a chilling story of my time serving as a chemical/ordnance officer aboard the SS Houston, 42nd Airship Battalion. Our mission was reconnaissance, observe and report. The higher command was very interested in new sources of power to fuel the Armada, so that it would never need to dock and refuel. The crew was skittish to the mission, as there had been many tales and reports of an entire flagships being consumed by enormous creatures. They said that air cargo mariners would travel through the Steamlands and encounter beautiful female-like celestial beings swimming through the air. They would sing and swirl like hypnotic kaleidoscopes, inviting vessels to draw closer to them. Unbeknownst to those poor souls, these deadly sirens were leading them above a jungle of unexplainable energy, only to be devoured by Air Krakens. That's right, my friend. Our crew was no less ensnared by this phenomenon. We heard the music on the air currents throughout the ship, each of us entranced by its allure. Then we saw them, exquisite forms of beauty, about 3 or 4, beckoning us to join them in their firmament. Once our vessel had deviated from our course, it attacked the Air Kraken, a huge leviathan of devastating mass, tentacles squeezing the hulk of the ship, bringing our ship closer to its gaping beak, beginning to chew us through. Plasma torpedoes had no effect on it. It only seemed to give it greater strength. We had no choice but to abandon ship. The few who were still not hypnotized by the sirens raced to the escape pods and jettisoned into the jungle itself. I barely escaped with my life. Our Ministry of Intelligence, the entire SS Houston, devoured within an hour. Brassthorn, that is not to be your fate should you commit this venture. I have since learned that this Air Kraken feeds on electrical currents like that of the raging storm clouds. I have constructed this anti-Air Kraken cannon, to defeat the great behemoth in one fell swoop. Small enough to be carried by a single shooter, large enough to be mounted on the starboard bow of any airship, capable of launching a projectile so destructive in nature, it is sure to bring success to the Kraken's destruction. The shell is a chemical reactor explosive which is ignited by electricity. You will need to fire it directly into the creature's mouth or any recognizable orifice. The good news is, I am 100% sure it will cause the Kraken to explode from within itself. The bad news is, I have never field tested it. You will be the first, Brassthorn. And then there's the business of the lashing tentacles, the deadly sirens. Bollocks. But these are trivial matters compared to being devoured by an Air Kraken. I have no doubt that you will overcome such obstacles with clever cunning and skill. Enclosed is the following crate. Are the Air Kraken cannon, 3 projectile missiles, and specific instructions for loading and firing. May the fates be in your favor and the winds at your back. I will expect a report upon your victorious return. So thus, return, my friend. Captain Edward Leviticus. Seems the ramblings of my esteemed tentacled walrus of a man were true. I stared down and imagined having to heft this cannon and point it at an Air Kraken. But that wasn't going to happen, I told myself. No. I'll just go to the jungle, disembark, and grab some mushrooms, and make it back up to the ladder to the Dream Strider, and get out of there in no time. Simple. I'm a scientist, not some petty gunslinger trying to make a name for himself. I have no need to quarrel with Air Krakens that may or may not even be there. But it still would be nice to have some backup. Calling Captain Silvermane of the airship Black Rose. This is Professor Brassthorn of the airship Dream Strider. Encrypted frequency. Do you read?
Aye, boyo. It's been a while. What can I be doing you for?
I was wondering. I have decided to go to the Blue Jungle.
It's your funeral. You'll be missed.
Aha, very funny. Listen, is there any way you might be able to give me some backup in case things go a little,
Are you mad? Wait, don't answer that. I already know the answer. There is no way I'm bringing the Black Rose anywhere near that death trap. Don't you know that Air Krakens are rumored to be floating about there these nights?
Why does everyone know about that except me? Come on. Think of all the gears and gold you'd be rolling in if you brought back the hide of an Air Kraken with its ink sac and beak still intact.
I don't care if that blasted creature flopped on me deck, helped pull the riggings back to port. Not only are what you're planning is suicide, but you're gambling that shiny new airship if you're just crossing into the airspace of the jungle. Period. What brings you there anyway?
I'm looking for mushrooms.
If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try someone who gives a damn.
Oh, come on, Silvermane.
Give my regards to the Air Krakens, Mushroom Man. Silvermane out.
Wait! Well, that's a first. A pirate showing more common sense than me. So much for that. I forced myself into my spacesuit and slumped into the pilot seat awaiting my arrival at the Blue Jungle. Slowly I could feel my hair standing on end, and the electrical instruments wobble and blink out one by one. Things were getting dark inside, and not even my electric candle of the lantern would work properly. I began a manual shutdown sequence, and allowed the living airship to take full control and focus my intentions, commanding her with my mind. Eventually, I could see it from beyond the porthole. The blue glow of the jungle mingled in a hazy twilight of a foggy miasma of ozone. The fog brimmed atop the canopy of the jungle, and I could see it. Dozens, no, hundreds of fallen airships. Their dilapidated airbags, sails, and riggings lay crumpled and scattered on the trees, with blue shocks orbing through the silhouetted airship graveyard. I gathered antivenom, specimen containers, and some emergency food rations into my messenger bag, loaded my revolver, and bashed my head on the ladder terminal on the way down. As I reached the loading dock, I took one last look out of the porthole ballast. Well, not an Air Kraken in sight. What was that? Suddenly, the airship cantered sharply to one side, and the porthole became enshrouded by a dark, reaching tendril of a chicken wearing a sombrero. Just kidding, it was an Air Kraken. I fled to the end of the ballast, stumbling into the shadows. If I could only reach the crate, then perhaps I could survive this assault. With a spark of luck, in the faintest blue glow, I found the crate, but it had spilled over and the rockets were rolling around like eggs in the belly of the airship. Then the porthole became covered, and I was met with a bloody, red eyeball, twice the size of myself. It saw me, and its alien-like death stare froze me in place. I could hear the tentacles wrapping around the ship, probing for vulnerable entryways. There was madness all around me. The formidable pressure was racking my airship with a pain it manifested into my head. I could feel my airship dying. At that moment, I was no longer afraid. I was enraged. "Let her go!" I screamed, and crawled on all fours, frantically seeking out the projectile. There was a drop in pressure, and I could feel this monstrous beast was pulling us down to the jungle below. It roared a foreign sound of defiance, and blasted the airship with a torrent of black ink. And all at once, I was surrounded by complete darkness. I scrambled about, stricken as my wretched life flashed before me in the dark. What a fool I was. And this was how it was going to end? A sacrifice to those tendrils which flail in the storm clouds of legend. Angrily, I scoffed at my pathetic folly. All this for a cure. All this for redemption. In the bleakest of moments, I took one last reach into the darkness. And by the grand cosmic symphony of coincidence, landed on one of the projectile missiles. I took a knee, dug my boots into the grating of the floor, and armed the cannon. A jagged, enormous beak emerged, scraping the black ink off the window with its pointed malice. The glass of the porthole was cracking, a window designed for the immense pressure of space, and it was cracking before my astonished rage. I had only one shot, just one before it would be all over, and I wasn't really known for my precision firearm handling. The airship let out a silent scream of terrified pain in my head, making me wince from the torture. And finally, the beak broke through to its quarry. It was now or never. In these moments, it would have been lovely to have a killer catchphrase or something before I took the shot, but the only thing that emerged was, "Squid!" Boom! Right in the kisser. The missile soared through the airship, blasting the porthole completely open, and into the beak, down to the throat. And the twitch of surprise and pain released its tangled hold and began to pull away. The airship jocked, throwing me out of the porthole, and the adrenaline of pure madness somehow found me grabbing a jagged piece of the wrecked outer hull with the handle of the cannon. I was dangling hundreds of feet above the ground, watching the monster peel itself away from the ship. A phosphorus glow of orange burning out of the epic monster's maw. And I was trying to remember what Leviticus said about the whole, what was it? Exploding from the inside out? Gore and guts rained down. My airship became a hovering mess of black ink and bloody chum stock. Pressurized suit or not, the smell, my friends, was the stuff of nightmares. With the last of my energy, I pulled my feeble body back into the ship with a slump, clicked my helmet off the side of my newly created door. The lashing remains of tentacles flailed on the canopy of the electric jungle. So much for the mushrooms. I watched the sizzling mess for a moment, only to be struck with a thought. That Air Kraken was the size of my ship. My airship is only considered a mid-class air vessel, which means that Air Kraken I destroyed was only a baby. I hurried my way up the ladder and reversed course immediately. Well, that's my tale of how I escaped the wrath of the Air Kraken and created a new door for my airship. It took a week of diving my airship below water and vigorous scrubbing to remove all the fish offal covering the ship. I still find various bits of Kraken rot throughout the ship to this day. Strange thing was, when I returned to the air hangar the next morning, there was a mysterious parcel left in my mailbox. When I opened it, there was no letter, only a small medal depicting an octopus with wings. I never found out where it came from, but I wear it to this night.